Hey everyone, welcome to another video. So today I wanted to finally get around to talking a little bit about how to create custom campaigns in DCS Retribution. I know that I promised this, and so we're going to make sure that we actually execute on this. So the first episode that we're going to have here on this tutorial series is just to go over what it is that you need in terms of your requirements, kind of talking a little bit about the different objects that exist, such as the mission file, the YAML file, faction files, and then we'll go through how to just kind of set up the bare bones of a campaign in terms of your front lines, selecting different bases, having Fobs, having aircraft carriers, and then we'll go into advanced things and other features that exist inside of the dynamic campaign in different videos. Otherwise, this will be very long. So just to kind of give you a set of requirements, the things that you have to have are not a lot. So you have to have a text editor, and I'll show you what I use, which is VS Code. And it's a really nice text editor. It's absolutely free. But you can do this really with anything that your heart desires, to include Notepad, although I'm not sure I'd recommend Notepad because dealing with YAML files and JSON files can be kind of annoying. You're going to have a current installation of DCS, and you actually have to own the maps that you want to make campaigns for. So you'll have to have them downloaded onto your hard drive, and we're going to actually use DCS to kind of configure the map itself. The main components of a campaign are not a lot. You have a DCS mission file, you have a YAML configuration file, and then you have a JSON file for your factions. And you don't even necessarily have to have a JSON file for your factions. You could use already existing factions if you like, or you can modify and do whatever you want. Now the DCS mission you can kind of think of it as kind of like the skeleton of all the assets in your campaign. So it's going to have, areas where you have maybe Scud launchers, or you have your Fobs, or anti-air assets, your carrier groups, etc. And then you'll also have like your front lines drawn and things like that. Now that doesn't mean that you're going to sit there and you're going to like put down an entire SA10 by hand. The nice thing about DCS Retribution is that you basically just put a single asset down, and then the mission generator will use that to determine where it should place the rest of the assets. So it makes it pretty quick. The next file is the YAML configuration file, and this is going to contain just some basic information about your campaign. Initial configurations, what aircraft the AI is going to prefer at different air bases, and then some basic information of like the author of the campaign, as well as if you wanted to add some like story to it. And we'll go over that when we get to it. And then the last one is a factions JSON file, and basically this just says okay, this is all of the different assets, whether they're ground assets, air assets, that can be brought into the theater of war, right? So you would say, hey, maybe have a Russian faction and they're going to have an SA-10, but maybe I have like an insurgent faction, and instead of SA-10s, I give them nothing better than manpads, right? It's basically up to you to define that, and they can be either as historically accurate as you'd like them to be. Obviously, if DCS doesn't have the asset, then you might be in trouble, or you can make them as fictional and as fun as you'd like as well. And then, as I kind of told you, the mission file will definitely go into significant depth on this, but it's the skeleton of the campaign. It's got your blue 4 and red 4 bases, Fobs, carriers, all of your SAM emplacement, supply lines, shipping lines, strike targets. You basically put in one of everything, and we'll talk a little bit about that when we get there. But first, I want to show you two things. One is Visual Studio. I'll put a link in the video description. So this is what I use. It's completely free. I use this very heavily for Python and other programming languages, both professionally for work as well as privately at home. It's completely free. It works on Windows, Mac, Linux, whatever. I highly recommend you download it. That's what I will be using, but it's totally up to you. And then lastly, before we get into it, is this I will also put into the video description, and this is just the DCS Retribution wiki, and this will talk through all of the things that I'm already telling you. It tells you, okay, you know, a little bit around, you know, retribution, but if we click on the campaigns here, it will tell you everything that I kind of said. It'll say, okay, yeah, you need to check these different things, you need to do these different things, here's the different descriptors in your YAML file, etc. I'm not going to read this to you, but we'll talk a little bit about it as we hit things, and it's a very good reference. In fact, I usually have this thing open while we go. And then the last thing that I'll talk about, I guess, is, and I'll link to this as well. When we look at the YAML files in a little bit, you'll see a bunch of these just random numbers, and these are the different airports. And this is based off of PyDCS. So in PyDCS, each airport is given a unique ID. That's a numerical ID. And we're using that to determine, okay, at this airport, you need to have these air assets, and these are the main ways that they're going to try to prioritize missions. And it's kind of helpful to just have a giant list of these things. Otherwise, you gotta, you know, kind of go and figure it out on your own. But this should be up to date, and of course, we'll continue to update it. But I'll also provide a link to this in the description as well. All right, so without further ado, we're going to start with getting our YAML file put together, as well as our mission file. So we're going to go ahead and open up DCS, and we'll see you in just a moment. All right, so we're back. We've got our DCS loaded up, and what I like to do personally is I like to have DCS in a windowed mode, and I make it a little bit smaller than my 4K output. And so here I think this is 1440. And then I also like to have the DCS Retribution Wikipedia up, because they have very helpful things in here, which are just really nice to be able to go and grab. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and click on Mission Editor here. We're going to create a new mission. We'll pick Sinai, why not? And then what you want to make sure that you have in the blue team, you need to make sure that they have Combined Joint Task Force Blue. And on the red team, you want to make sure that they have Combined Joint Task Force Red. If for whatever reason one of those does not exist, you make sure that you add it to the associated column. So for instance, if let's pretend that they were here, you'd want to select Combined Joint Task Force Red, and you'd want to push it over to the red. From here, we're going to just go ahead and click OK. All right, so our Sinai map just loaded in. And now this is kind of where we need to make some decisions about how you want to initiate the campaign, right? So we have to decide which of these we want to be red or blue, and of course which ones in general we want. So we're just going to make something, you know, straightforward here. It's kind of a smaller airport. Also be aware of like how many parking spots are here, right? Because that will impact the size of squadrons. So like this one's kind of small. This one looks like it's a lot bigger, right? So for instance, so in this case, we're just going to make something up here. We'll just do, sure, why not? We'll do Cairo West. This whole thing is Cairo West. Go ahead and set that as red. We'll set this one here, Wadi, it's red. We'll set bit, it's red. And then we'll set gotta find one with some parking. We'll set what is this? Ovda here. It'll be blue. And then how big is this? That's kind of small. And how far is this? It's 100 and some odd miles. 70 miles. How big is that? It's really tiny. Yeah. Obviously, there's not a lot in the desert, which kind of makes sense. So let's just do that. We'll put a fob in the middle somewhere. That gives us an opportunity to show off how to put fobs together. So these are our main bases for the sake of this tutorial. And then the next thing that we need to do is we need to go in and create our supply lines and set down our fobs. So for fobs, we can actually just go into our Wikipedia here. We actually have there's a quick guide here. So if we scroll down, and this has got just about everything you could ever possibly want to know. So forward operating bases, right? We need to put down an SKP11 mobile ATC. And we need to define it as the name of it. So what that means is that we have to call it a name, and then that name needs to go into our YAML. The air bases themselves, or our airports, do not need to be named in our YAML. What they are is their actual numbers that I showed you earlier. So let's put a fob in over here by Burr. Right, this looks like a nice place to put a fob. Right here. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and put in a ground unit. I believe it's technically under unarmed. Oh, and make sure that you are task force. We'll do red because I want this to be a bad guy. I want this to be the first place that you capture. So we need to find the truck. There it is. And so we'll put it over here. You know, this looks like a good place over here, maybe. We want flat land. Put it right there. We're going to call this fob cal. All right. And that's going to be our fob. So now what we want to do is we need to define our supply lines. I don't have it spun up over here. Supply routes. Okay, here we go. We need to use a blue M113. And so what we're going to do is we're going to drop down a blue M113 over here at Avda. And then we're going to draw waypoints from here to our fob. We're going to drop down another vehicle here. And then from our fob to our airbase. And we're just going to keep doing the same thing over and over again. And what this is going to do is it's going to create our front lines. You can go absolutely nuts and follow the roads, very precisely. However, I'm told that that's not the best way to do it. That's how I did my original Operation Desert Saber, because I misread this and thought that everything had to be perfectly on roads. So I got very intimately familiar with some of the roads on the Sinai Peninsula. A more, I guess, correct way of doing this would be to just drop down, like let's say here, put a waypoint on a road, and then kind of go quite a ways away, put it on another road, and so on. So let's go ahead and start. We're going to go ahead and put down, it's under armor, it's an APC M113. We'll just drop it right here. And what it's going to do is it's going to automatically get associated to the nearest fob or airport. In this case, it'll get associated here. And then what we'll do is we'll just start adding a couple of waypoints. We know that we want to go that way, so we'll keep going south. And again, just kind of, it's good to kind of follow the major road systems. It'll help. It'll help make life a little easier later. So we want to go all the way to over here. All right, so that's our first one done. And I'm not gonna have us sit here and do every single one. So what we'll also do, just as a proof of concept, is we will put another. I'm gonna cut the video, but I'll put another one in over to Cabrit Air Base. It's also important to note that you want to make sure you go over bridges. So I don't think Cabrit has a easy accessible bridge. I believe the bridge is up here. Yeah, Guantara should be a bridge right here. Yep. So we'll have to get it across this bridge and then down south. And it's just important to think about that as your, the different infrastructure and components that you have in terms of the flow. Because it might be a little awkward to go across and then all the way down and then all the way over, but that's fine. Actually, what we'll do is we'll actually, instead of Cabrit, we'll do Faid. Oops. That. We'll actually, and that's just because I think it'll be a better flow. So we'll get rid of this guy. All right, so now we have a couple of our things linked, and I'll continue to do this to everything that we have, and we'll see you just a moment when that's done. All right, so we're back, and we just finished doing our M113s for all of our supply lines. So I did make one small change. I did change Cairo West to Cairo International simply because for the tutorial I was not really wanting to go all the way through Cairo. Anywho, so as you can see, our supply lines kind of follow around here, come up, go over this bridge, come back down, go to our fob, and then they also go to our main airbase over here. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to put an aircraft carrier up here by Ben Gurion. So what we'll do for that, we'll just call it Blue CV. Okay. And then we are going to select the Stennis. And we'll just pop it down in the ocean. That's all we got to do, and that will generate the actual carrier group. So what we have now is basically all that we need to get up and running, and what we'll do is we'll have to set all of this up in our YAML file. So let's go ahead and I'm just going to switch over here real quick and take a look at a previous YAML that was done for a map that I put together a little while ago. So we'll kind of go through this a little bit and we'll talk a little bit about what's in here. So the name is just the name of our map, or our campaign, sorry. The theater is the actual map name, and so this is a list. So Sinai is the Sinai Peninsula versus like Caucasus, the Caucasus. And the list of available maps should be in the Wikipedia. Author, you can put down yourself. Recommended faction, and this is where it's interesting. This is where you kind of get to pick whether or not you want to use something that already exists inside of Liberation or not. But you need to make sure that this name here follows the name of the actual faction. We're going to leave these both alone for now for the sake of this tutorial. Recommended start date, that's up to you. We're going to make this a modern map, so we'll do 2011. A description, we'll this is going to be whatever you're going to call the description. You do need to have these little tags here, this little P tag. And the reason is because this is HTML and it gets rendered. And so just whatever you're going to do, just write inside of this particular, the two tags here. Ms, this is your actual mission file name. So when we make ours in a moment, we're going to rename it to tutorial.ms. It needs to follow the exact same name as the mission file because it's going to look for it there. Performance, this is the performance that you think is necessary. So in the Operation Desert Saber map, that's end-to-end all of Sinai. And so I put it down as a performance of 3. What we did, probably maybe like a 1 or a 2. Probably a 2 because Sinai, I'm going to guess, isn't as optimized as like the Persian Gulf. Version. So this one's kind of important. What you're going to want to do, there's a couple of things that you can do. One is you could just take a look at what versions exist in the campaigns that you're currently playing inside of Retribution. But instead, the official answer is you should go into this this link here, which is the actual game version.py, and then look at the campaign format version, where 10 is the major and 7 is the minor, so it would be 10.7. In this case, it's it's 10.7 here. And this is just recent. I believe my original campaign is actually 10.6. I just recently updated it because I'm making some changes. This recommended player money, enemy money, and this stuff, I don't actually think that we need this at all. When I will post the YAML and the MIS file for this tutorial, and have it linked in the video description so that you can take a look. But I don't believe this is going forward is going to be something that is heavily used. Advanced IADs, we're not going to cover it in this tutorial, but we'll try to cover it in a future tutorial. And this just allows you to use the Skynet IAD script and then set it up in a way that where you have different infrastructure which supports the IADs and allows it to operate kind of in a more realistic way. For now, we're not going to worry about that. We're just going to put in our, our short range SAMs, our long range SAMs, some AAA, etc., and we'll go from there. Settings, max frontline length, and income multiplier. So frontline length, this is a new feature that was released, I believe, in Retribution a couple of versions ago, and this allows you to kind of expand and contract how long you want your frontline to be. This was just a default value that I saw previously, and I used it, and this can be overwritten by folks when they're playing your campaign. Player income multiplier, again, it's the same as over here. You don't actually need this. This is optional. All right, next. Next would be our squadrons. So the squadrons are a little bit more important. This is where we define each of the different, either it's a fob or a road base or our carrier group or our airports. And this is where things can get a little bit hokey, right? This is where most issues pop up. But each individual, we'll call it the location. So in this case, the Stennis. You have to select, okay, I want like an F-14, so this is an F-14. I want a Hornet. I want my E2C, and I also want like my tanker. And you say, okay, this is where they're going to be on the John Stennis here, and these are their primary and secondary missions. And then you'll see these numbers here, and these are the individual airports based off of this airport's markdown file. So this is just an extract from PyDCS that I put together, but this ID, is where that number is coming from. And I like to put in like a little comment just to say, hey, this is this airport. Otherwise, like I honestly don't know that ID number 24 is Ben Gurion. And you do this for everything for the AI based on so this was Egypt, and we'll use Egypt again. So you put down what's in here, and then we go from there. So what we'll do next is I'm going to create a new YAML file and then walk through what we did. All right, tutorial on how to make a Retribution campaign, and we're just this is gonna also be tutorial. .mis. Performance, we'll set that to 2. Player money, we'll leave all that the same. We'll leave everything else alone. We'll just get rid of these for now. This hashtag here just as a comment. And I recommend when you're kind of messing around with this, if you are deleting things outright, I like to always start with a previous YAML file just because it's a little bit easier to deal with the formatting. So if you're going to do something like this, it's easier to just comment it. In my case, it's control and then the what is that, forward slash? I guess it'd be backslash, the question mark key, backslash, and that'll automatically comment it. And if I need to uncomment it, it's the same thing. All right, iads, we're going to leave it as false. We're going to leave this alone. So one important thing to note is that each of the different squadrons have very specific primary taskings. And if we go over to our Wikipedia really quickly here, you'll see that the major task types are barcap, CAS, seed, transport, AEW and C, and refueling. So you want to make sure that when you select an aircraft, like this tanker, that it can do that. And not everything absolutely must have, you know, not every airport necessarily needs to have different squadrons. In our case, they will, just because it's a very tiny map. But go ahead and do whatever you feel is the best for your campaign. The next thing to note is that you can actually add additional aircraft on a specific like a line here. So in this instance, you'll see that we have barcap, air-to-air with the F-15C Eagle. You can also add the F-16 here, and what's going to happen is the AI, when it's creating the different flights, it will prefer an F-15C, and then if it's not available, it'll just move down the line. So that's another thing, and you can have as many aircraft as you'd like in here, but be advised that if you do add, let's say, like 20 different squadrons, you're going to get the AI buying lots and lots of aircraft, which might be what you want. Maybe you do want like some huge, very challenging, very populated campaign. All right, so let's go ahead and continue forward here, and we need to fix, obviously we're not at Tel Nof anymore, or some of these other places. So let's go ahead and figure out where we're at. So we already have our fob, which is good. Next we want Faid. Faid is 6. What else do we have? We have Faid. We have Wadi. Which is 13. And we have Cairo International, 17. All right, next I'm going to go ahead and just erase all of this excess here. Okay. And we can kind of reuse this since we are using the Egyptian military. What I'm going to do is I'm going to actually delete all of this stuff here. And I'm going to add basically some of this. So we're going to give them that. I'm going to give them the MiG as a backup. That. And then I want strike aircraft. Just go ahead and grab that, put that in here. And then for Wadi, we're going to give them F-16s. The Apaches. The Frogfoots, that's fine. And Cairo, we can kind of keep this the same. We'll also give them let's do that. Seed, Cas, Strike, BAI is fine. But we'll give them, instead of the Hind, we'll have them run around with the Apaches. Actually, we'll give them both. All right, so this is us, and we can very quickly test this. So in just a minute, I'm going to add this, and I'll show you when we get there, but we'll add this into Retribution and quickly load it to make sure everything popped up. All right, so to test our campaign, just to make sure that the supply lines look right and that we didn't screw up our YAML, I have them saved in this DCS Retribution campaign folder, which is what I'm just using in order to keep track of everything. But what we're going to do is we're actually going to copy both of these files here, and I'm going to go into my DCS Retribution installation. We're going to go into Resources, and then here there's Campaigns. We're going to paste the tutorial right directly into here, so they're both available. And now we're going to go ahead and launch Retribution. All right, now that we're in Retribution, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and click New. Let's click Next. We're going to look for Tutorial. We see it here. The tutorial on how to make Retribution campaign. It's got everything set up for us. It's got the start date all set. We can click Next. It's got all the aircraft that we're kind of expecting. Next. Just kind of click through this. And there we go. It looks about right based on what we put in. And notice that we have no targets to strike, which is kind of a problem, right? So let's go ahead and in the next video, because I'm going to break this up, we're going to talk about how to add some targets. So we're going to add SAMs, and we're going to add strike targets. All right, thank you very much for watching. We'll see you in the next video.